You're stuck in traffic, engines rumbling, exhaust fumes choking the air, and you check your watch. You've moved maybe 300 feet in 45 minutes. Now imagine that's not just your Tuesday commute, that's Manila, Philippines, where some drivers spend the equivalent of 16 full days per year just sitting in gridlock, burning fuel, burning money, burning their sanity. But here's what nobody's telling you. This isn't just about bad roads or too many cars. This traffic nightmare is actually a window into one of the most fascinating economic transformations happening on the planet right now. And it's about to change everything you thought you knew about emerging markets and the global automotive industry. If you're watching this and you haven't hit that like button yet, do it now, because what I'm about to show you will completely shift how you see economic development, infrastructure, and why your next car might be connected to what's happening in these chaotic streets halfway around the world. And make sure you subscribe, because we're diving deep into stories that connect the cars we drive to the economic forces shaping our world. Hey, this is Mark, and you're welcome to AUTOSAYS. Let me take you back to 1986, the year the Philippines emerged from decades of authoritarian rule, a nation with enormous potential, but infrastructure that had been neglected for years. Manila's population was growing, the middle class was starting to emerge, and people had dreams. Dreams that included owning a car, that symbol of freedom and success that Americans have cherished since the Model T rolled off Ford's assembly line. Fast forward to today, and the Philippines has one of the fastest growing automotive markets in Southeast Asia, with vehicle sales that have nearly tripled in the last 15 years. Sounds like success, right? Economic growth, rising incomes, more people achieving their dreams. But here's where the story gets complicated, because that same success has created what experts call the worst traffic congestion in the entire world. We're not talking worst in Asia, we're talking worst on Earth. The Japan International Cooperation Agency estimated that traffic congestion in Manila costs the Philippine economy approximately $2.6 billion every single year in lost productivity, wasted fuel, and missed opportunities. That's billion with a B. Think about that for a second. An amount of money that could build hospitals, schools, train thousands of workers, just evaporating into thin air because people are sitting in traffic. Now you might be wondering, why should you care about traffic in a country thousands of miles away? Because this story reveals something crucial about how economic development actually works, about the hidden costs of progress that nobody talks about when they're celebrating GDP growth and rising car sales. And for those of us who love cars and the automotive industry, this is a masterclass in how infrastructure, policy, and consumer behavior create ripple effects that reach all the way to Detroit, Tokyo, and Stuttgart. The Philippines automotive market is dominated by Japanese brands, Toyota, Mitsubishi, Honda, Nissan. These names control roughly 85% of the market. American manufacturers, the ones we grew up with, the ones that defined car culture for generations, have less than 5% market share. Why? Because starting in the 1970s, when American automakers were struggling with fuel efficiency and quality issues, Japanese manufacturers saw an opportunity. They understood that emerging markets needed affordable, reliable, fuel-efficient vehicles, not gas-guzzling luxury cruisers. They built relationships, established dealer networks, and created financing options that made car ownership accessible to the growing middle class. It was strategic, it was patient, and it worked brilliantly. But here's the twist. That success planted the seeds of the current crisis. See, the Philippine government, like many developing nations, saw increasing car ownership as a sign of prosperity. More cars meant more taxes, more jobs in sales and service, more economic activity. What they didn't do was invest proportionally in the infrastructure to support those cars. Manila's road network was designed decades ago for a fraction of the current vehicle population. The public transportation system, while extensive, is fragmented, unreliable, and often unsafe, which pushes more people toward private vehicle ownership. It's a vicious cycle. Poor public transit drives car sales. More cars create worse traffic. Worse traffic makes people more desperate for the control and comfort of their own vehicle. And round we go. Here's where the economic story gets really interesting. The average Filipino family that buys a car isn't wealthy by American standards. They're making enormous financial sacrifices to own that vehicle. Car loans in the Philippines often run for 5 to 7 years, with interest rates that would shock most American buyers. Families are spending 25 to 35% of their monthly income just on car payments, fuel, and maintenance. That's money that's not going into savings, education, or starting businesses. It's locked into a depreciating asset that spends hours every day going nowhere, but they do it anyway, because the alternative, unreliable jeepneys, overcrowded buses, the uncertainty of getting to work on time, feels worse. This reveals something profound about human psychology and economic decision-making. We're not always rational actors making optimal choices. We're emotional beings who value autonomy, status, and security, even when the math doesn't add up. The automotive industry has understood this for over a century. Henry Ford didn't just build cars, he built financing systems that made those cars accessible. He understood that people would stretch their budgets to achieve the freedom that car ownership represents. Now let's connect this to the bigger picture, because in 2010, the Philippine government launched an ambitious program called the Comprehensive Automotive Resurgence Strategy, or CARS program, designed to attract automotive manufacturing investment and create jobs. They offered tax incentives to manufacturers who would build assembly plants in the country. Toyota and Mitsubishi took the deal, investing hundreds of millions of dollars in facilities that now produce vehicles not just for the domestic market, but for export throughout Asia. On paper, this looks like smart industrial policy: create jobs, develop expertise, integrate into global supply chains. But here's the question nobody wanted to ask out loud. Does it make sense to incentivize more car production when your infrastructure can't handle the cars you already have? It's like a doctor prescribing more food to a patient suffering from obesity. The symptom and the cure are pointing in opposite directions. This is the hidden economic story that traffic reveals. Developing nations are often caught in a trap between the growth model they can achieve and the growth model they actually need. Cars create jobs, generate tax revenue, and satisfy consumer aspirations. Infrastructure projects are expensive, take years to complete, and don't offer the same immediate political rewards. So governments take the path of least resistance, celebrating rising car sales while the daily reality for citizens gets progressively worse. And here's the fear factor. This isn't sustainable. At some point, the economic costs of congestion exceed the economic benefits of automotive industry growth. Businesses start relocating to cities with better infrastructure. Talented workers choose opportunities elsewhere. The very prosperity that drove car ownership starts to erode because the infrastructure can't support continued growth. The Philippines is approaching that tipping point right now. But wait, there's a twist in this story, because the same technological revolution that's transforming transportation in developed countries could offer a different path forward. Electric vehicles, ride-sharing platforms, app-based public transit solutions. These aren't just trendy Silicon Valley innovations, they're potential game changers for cities like Manila. The Philippine government has announced ambitious plans to transition toward electric vehicles, with targets for EV adoption and plans for charging infrastructure. Companies like Grab, the Southeast Asian ride-hailing giant, are expanding electric vehicle options in their fleets. Startups are developing app-based jeepney and bus systems that could make public transit more reliable and user-friendly. This is where urgency comes into play. The next 5 to 10 years will determine whether the Philippines breaks free from the congestion trap or sinks deeper into it. And this matters globally because the Philippines isn't unique. Cities across Asia, Africa, and Latin America are facing the exact same challenge. How do you satisfy the legitimate aspirations of a growing middle class for mobility and freedom without creating infrastructure nightmares that strangle economic growth? The automotive industry is watching this closely because the future of global car sales depends on emerging markets. Developed countries are saturated. Most families who want cars already have them. Growth is coming from places like the Philippines, Indonesia, Vietnam, India. But if those markets follow the same path that's led to Manila's traffic apocalypse, eventually consumers will push back, governments will restrict vehicle ownership, and the growth story falls apart. So the industry is investing heavily in solutions. Smaller, more efficient vehicles designed specifically for dense urban environments, electric powertrains that reduce local pollution, connected car technology that could enable better traffic management, and mobility services that offer alternatives to ownership. Here's the inspirational turn. This crisis is forcing innovation. Filipino entrepreneurs are building electric tricycles and jeepneys using locally sourced components. Engineers are developing traffic management systems using artificial intelligence and real-time data. Urban planners are finally getting the political support to implement bus rapid transit systems and protected bike lanes. The traffic nightmare that seemed like an unsolvable problem is becoming a catalyst for reimagining what urban mobility could look like. And there's a lesson here for everyone watching. Whether you're in Los Angeles, London, or Lagos, the way we've thought about cars and transportation for the past century is being challenged. The freedom and independence that car ownership represents is real and valuable. But when millions of people exercise that freedom simultaneously in the same space, you get paralysis instead of mobility. The future requires us to think differently about how we move people and goods, about the relationship between individual choice and collective infrastructure, about what prosperity actually means. The Philippines is on the front lines of that transformation, and what happens there will influence transportation policy and automotive industry strategy worldwide. As we close this story, think about this. Every time you're stuck in traffic, you're not just experiencing an inconvenience, you're witnessing an economic system under stress. You're seeing the collision between 20th century dreams and 21st century realities. The cars we drive, the infrastructure we build, the choices we make about mobility, these aren't just personal decisions. They're part of a global story about development, aspiration, and the search for sustainable progress. Manila's traffic isn't just a Filipino problem. It's a preview of challenges that cities everywhere must confront, and the solutions being tested in those congested streets might just hold the keys to unlocking mobility for billions of people worldwide. That's the hidden economic story that traffic reveals, and it's still being written right now.